One of the key elements to quality storytelling in cinema is the motivation of the protagonist, which helps drive the plot toward action. When a character has an internal motivation, they are driven to act, which gives us, the audience, a character to relate with and action to engage in. What's important to observe, however, is that desire is not explicitly motivation. A character's motivation, which informs their desire, is comprised of one or several components: the character's traits or flaws, their values and ethics, their backstory, and possibly the circumstances the character finds themselves in. To provide context on this, I will discuss 3 examples of character motivation in film, with a 4th example described in greater detail that I feel is lacking motivation. Furiosa lives in a post-apocalyptic dystopia run by the tyrannical, Immortan Joe, who subjugates women, enslaving them as wives, locked away for his personal use. The wives escape the citadel, and Furiosa aids them as she too wants to flee Joe's tyranny. Kidnapped at a young age, Furiosa is hoping to find where she was raised, the idyllic Green Place. And since she is a proficient driver and smuggler, Furiosa is confident in her ability to rescue the wives. Neo is working a joyless desk job and moonlighting as a cybercriminal. As he is searching for the renowned hacker Morpheus, he meets Trinity, who hints that Neo's reality is a lie. The next day, he is brought in for questioning about his ties with Morpheus, and he denies knowing him. The events surrounding the interrogation start to unravel Neo's perception of reality. It is then that Neo meets Morpheus, who offers a chance to escape reality. Unhappy with his life and wanting to unplug from his state of being, Neo takes the red pill. During Longshank's oppression of the Scots, Wallace was witness to these atrocities, which included the tragic loss of his father at a young age. After a worldly cross-culture education, a mature Wallace returns to Scotland. There, he reunites with Mirren, a childhood friend who he begins courting. Their love grows, and the two secretly get married by traditional handfast ceremony. Although the two elope to hide their nuptials, English soldiers still attempt to rape Mirren. After defending herself, Mirren is executed for attacking an English soldier. The handfast is used by Mirren's executor to wipe away her blood. Embittered by these actions, Wallace avenges her death. The character of Superman, as portrayed by Henry Cavill in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, I find to be lacking motivation, specifically Superman's motivation to save humanity. Snyder's Man of Steel, which in part is a remake of Donner's Superman, makes a muddled mess of a relatively simple comic book hero. Much like the comic mythos, Clark, a child of Krypton, arrives on Earth and is raised by the Kents. He develops superpowers at a young age, and when faced with the opportunity to save the lives of others, he does so. His father, Jonathan Kent, fearful of his son being discovered, warns him to keep his powers private.
I just wanted to help.
I know you did, but we talked about this. Right? Right? We talked about this. You have... Oh, Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
maybe. There's more at stake here than just our lives, Clark, or the lives of those around us. When the world finds out what you can do, it's going to change everything. Our beliefs, our notions of what it means to be human, everything. You saw how Pete's mom reacted, right? She was scared, Clark.
Why?
People are afraid of what they don't understand.
Growing up, Clark remained steadfast and kept his powers a secret, even when faced with the imminent death of his father. Even to the end, Jonathan urged Clark to hold back his abilities and sacrificed his own life to protect his son's identity. This provides solid motivation for Jonathan as we understand his desire to keep Clark shielded. It also shows us that even though a young Clark wanted to save those in danger, he is willing to let a person die to hide his identity. After Jonathan's death, we don't catch up with Clark until 16 years later, who is faced with yet another circumstance of plot that offers him a chance to save those in need. He uses his might and resilience to save several from a burning oil rig. Fleeing the scene, Clark drifts along, possibly with the words of his father still echoing in his head. It would seem that although Clark will save those in need, as circumstance presents, he moves on to the next town, to the next job, the fear of being discovered ever looming. This pattern is discovered by intrepid reporter Lois Lane, who traces his steps back to Smallville and over the gravesite of Jonathan Kent finally meets Clark.
Where are you from? What are you doing here? Let me tell your story.
What if I don't want my story told?
It's going to come out eventually. Somebody's going to get a photograph or figure out where you live.
Well, and then I'll just disappear again.
The only way you could disappear for good is to stop helping people altogether, and I sense that's not an option for you.
My father believed that if the world found out who I really was, they'd reject me. Fear.
Much of Clark's fear and mistrust of humanity is not just grounded on his father's words. Early on in his life, when his powers start to differentiate him from his peers, Clark becomes isolated. Even his mother's guidance suggested imagining being alone on an island. This isolation was further exasperated by bullies picking on young Clark, who had the power to fight back, but repressed his anger. It is not surprising, then, that we don't see Clark establishing any friendships, his only friends being his parents, who clearly influence him greatly. Even as an adult, drifting from one job to the next, we get the impression of a loner that keeps mostly to himself. So when Lois engages with him and offers to tell his story, Clark naturally shrinks back, threatening to run into hiding once more. Clark has built up such a level of mistrust in humanity, he believes his father's words to be true, that even if he does a good deed with his superpowers, humanity would be afraid because the powers are alien to them, which explains the 20-year gap between the bus and the oil rig. Even when Clark is faced with the threat of Zod, he compares the ambiguity of Zod's motives with his own lack of faith in humanity. This is not remedied when Clark, now taking on the mantle of Superman, reveals himself for the first time. During this inaugural encounter, he is met with hostility, placed in chains, and interrogated by high-ranking representatives.
You let them handcuff you?
Wouldn't be much of a surrender if I resisted. And if it makes them feel more secure, then all the better for it.
Hi, my name is Dr.
Emil Hamilton. I know. I can see your ID tag in your breast pocket.
Along with a half-eaten roll of wintergreen lifesavers.
You can also see the squad of soldiers in the next room, preparing that tranquilizing agent of yours.
You won't need it.
Sir, you can't expect us to not take precautions. You could be carrying some kind of alien pathogen.
Been here for 33 years, Doctor. Haven't infected anyone yet.
That you know of. We have legitimate security concerns. Now, you've revealed your identity to Miss Lane over there. Why won't you do the same with us?
Let's put our cards on the table here, General. You're scared of me because you can't control me.
You don't. And you never will. But that doesn't mean I'm your enemy.
This scene defines Superman's broken relationship with humanity. Despite his peaceful surrender, he is treated as a threat. Arguably, Superman responds appropriately.
You can also see the squad of soldiers in the next room, preparing that tranquilizing agent of yours.
You could be carrying some kind of alien pathogen.
Been here for 33 years, Doctor. Haven't infected anyone yet.
You let them handcuff you?
Wouldn't be much of a surrender if I resisted. And if it makes them feel more secure, then all the better for it. You're scared of me because you can't control me.
You don't. And you never will.